Hello everyone and welcome back to Soundspace. And if you're new here, well then welcome for the very first time. I encourage you to go listen to our other episodes. Today we have with us Rachel Warkentin. Rachel is a singer-songwriter from White Rock, BC, who currently lives in Montreal, Quebec. From a very young age, she began playing music and singing. Further on, she studied voice and piano at the Royal Conservatory of Music, growing her skill set through her teachings from vocal coach Debra DeVaughn. She made an appearance in the 200th episode of Supernatural, which featured a choral cover of On Wayward Son by Kansas in 2014, as well as the Amazon Prime series The Man in the High Castle. From there, she began a Bachelor of Music from Carleton University, where she evolved her vocal and songwriting skills under award-winning composer and singer Giselle Mins and jazz vocalist Roxanne Goodman. Rachel was a finalist in the 2019 Music Ottawa Singer-Songwriter competition and appeared on 2 seasons of Music Volume on Your TV in Smiths Falls. In the fall of 2020, she independently released 4 singles: Try It Out, Misconception, Dear Mum, and Breathe. These were produced by Soundspace co-host Quddus Gordon, featured a host of musicians from Carleton Music Program, and was mastered by Grammy-nominated engineer Philip Shaw Bova. More recently, Rachel worked with the guidance of a jazz saxophonist and program director for the Ottawa International Jazz Festival, Petr Cancura, on a project that was released in the fall of 2022. She also released a new single in 2022 entitled Warmer Light. As of 2023, her cover of On Wayward Son has accumulated nearly 7 million listens on Spotify, where she has over 30,000 monthly listeners. Please welcome Rachel Warkentin.
Rachel, welcome to the podcast. How are you feeling?
Thanks, I'm feeling good. Thanks for having me.
Yes, very glad to have you on. We are also joined, of course, with the full Soundspace crew on this episode. Very exciting for this interview. We have Anthony. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks.
Thank you as well. And Q, what are you doing on an interview? This is your first one so far. I'm so excited to have you on, man.
I'm on both shows. Look at that.
Look at that. It's the same show, man. It's just the 2 different episode
That's
formats.
Right. Today I'm a guest and a host at the same time, so I'll be asking myself questions and answering them. It's going to be very confusing for the listeners, but
it's going to be great.
Does that make you a ghost? A guest / host?
Oh my goodness.
Oh.
Are you a rapper person?
So, Rachel,
Anyways,
I'm super excited to begin this interview with you. Obviously, you've done a lot of music over the years. There's a lot of things to get to. I think we're just going to start really from the beginning, the intro. What has been your earliest significant musical memory that stuck with you? Was it lessons you went to or a concert? What was that for you?
I feel like, so growing up, I had this kind of Tinker-Tonk Casio piano. And it was one of those ones where when you punch in the numbers, it plays do you know what I'm talking about?
I had the exact same one, yeah. So.
And it plays like a piano version of a popular song.
That's right.
Yeah, anyway, so I would be 7 or 8, and I was writing lyrics to the piano version of these songs. But I think Let It Be was one of them, and so I wrote about letting an ant live or letting a beetle live or something. And then my mom was like, oh, that's a Beatles song, and she played me the original, and I was like, oh, I thought I wrote that.
You're like, Paul McCartney ripped off my ant song?
The audacity.
Yeah, literally. But yeah, I remember writing songs on the Casio piano, not really the melody, I guess just the lyrics.
Right. Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
I'm laughing because I had, I think, almost the same piano, but it must have been a different model because my Casio $30 Radio Shack keyboard didn't have any pop songs, but it had Fur Elise and
mine had that too.
Yeah,
yeah.
The Turkish March, all the classical pieces that non-classical people know, kind of just the famous ones. And so, you could kind of just hit the notes and fake your way through it. It would hit the notes for you. And it had this silly bank. When I punched in the numbers, I was like, oh, a helicopter noise. Ooh, a gunshot. And it was just random sounds. And keep in mind, this is the keyboard that my dad bought me because my mom told me I was starting piano lessons. So he was like, spare no expense. We bought a $15 corner store keyboard. So that's what I practiced on in the early days. But hey, I'm still playing today.
Yeah, I think piano is a great starting point. A lot of people that have come on so far start off with piano. But I guess what I want to know, what was the leap from piano to the starting point of your career? And what made you decide to take it further than just the piano. You see what I mean?
Honestly, there wasn't really like a big moment. I think I always kind of sang. That was kind of the main thing that I like to do. I played piano. I did like the classical RCM program, but singing was like the main thing that I loved. And I don't really remember, like I just was always singing. So then I started taking singing lessons, I think when I was like 11 or 12, and kind of just was doing that. And I did musical theater and stuff, classical musical theater first, and then slowly started like roping my voice teacher into doing a couple pop songs with me. And then I like did some recitals, but I was like, no, I'm only performing the pop songs.
Do you remember which songs?
I don't remember, honestly. Oh, I think it was Sense, actually, the Tom Waddell song.
Oh, okay, wow.
I think so.
That's the song
which is
that
something,
we...
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the first thing that we did together.
It was the first time I met you, I think.
Cover, yeah.
Yeah.
I think you came over to like plan stuff, and I was like,
Yeah.
hey, do you want to do a cover? Like,
Yeah,
is
well, I
anything
think
ready?
you were like, oh, let's see like what you do. And I was like, okay.
Right.
Yeah. But then I guess like the moment that I decided I was going to pursue it, I was really obsessed with Tom Waddell when I was younger. And after graduating high school, I went to a Tom Waddell concert in New York. And I was supposed to go to school in Vancouver for like sciences or something. And then I like saw this kind of more intimate concert. I'd only ever been to like big arenas. So I saw this like more intimate concert and was like, oh, dang, like you don't have to be some big pop star. Like I can do this and do it a different way. And
Right.
Yeah, that's definitely special. That's quite something.
Very cool.
So obviously, like, there was almost no doubt in your mind that you wanted to pursue music.
yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you were considering a sciences program out in Vancouver, but was it after this concert where you really made up your mind?
Yeah, I think so. I always kind of thought I was going to do like go to school, do science and stuff. I didn't really consider going to school for music until I saw this concert. I think I wasn't that excited about going to school in Vancouver for sciences. I was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is like, I'm pretty academic. This is what people expect.
Okay.
So then when I went to this concert, I decided to like defer my school, take a gap year, travel, and then was like, I'm going to do music. And I was just kind of like, fuck it. Like, let's do this.
Was your mom pushing
Yeah,
music, or
definitely.
was she like, oh?
I think my parents were just waiting for me to realize that that's what I wanted to do.
Okay.
Like when I
that's
told them,
amazing.
they were like, okay, yeah, that makes sense for you. I was like, oh, sick.
Dang, that's like usually parents have a problem with the arts. Like every time
I
they're
know.
like, oh, you need a stable thing, you need to find like, but that's a really chill mom right there.
No, my parents are both really, really supportive.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
that's really
Are
nice.
your parents artistic as well?
My mom's really artistic.
Yeah, I feel like that helps a lot. You know, having an artistic parent really encourages you, it pushes you to pursue your passion
Definitely.
in your art, whether it's music or whatever other art medium you'd like to explore.
Yeah.
So I'd like to talk a little bit more about your academic background. Can you tell me about your experiences in the different music programs you attended eventually? Let's start with your Bachelor of Music from Carleton University.
Yeah, that was it's funny because so when I was taking voice lessons when I was younger, I was so shy. Like I would face the corner and my voice teacher would turn and face the other way and I would barely sing. Like she'd have to play piano so quietly during warm-ups. So I was so nervous to study it because I had such bad performance anxiety, such bad stage fright. So I think through Carleton, I really learned to take up more space and started writing and playing kind of what I wanted, developing a sound. It was really a pivotal time for me in terms of figuring out who I am musically, and it was great for networking and making connections and stuff too. And obviously I learned a lot in the classes, but I feel like more so I learned a lot of like music life experience.
That's a lot of pressure from the start because I feel like vocal teachers hate a quiet singer. Like a buddy of mine told me that he went into his first singing lesson and the guy like held up he's like an angry Polish man for a teacher, and he was just like, this microphone, you see this? This is a crutch. And then he like threw it in the closet and he's like,
Oh
you
my
should
God.
be able to sing so that the guy in the back of the concert hall can hear you, and just from sheer projection. So because he was also kind of like a mumbly singer, and that was like his main focus was just volume. And
Well,
I never even realized
I
that
was just
like-
so shy. Like my mom said that when I was younger, I would sing in the crib. Like
Really?
in the morning, she'd wake up and I'd be singing. And then as soon as I saw her creep around, I would just shut up right away.
Oh, we got stage fright at age 2.
It was, I really come by it, honestly.
Wow. Did you have a breakthrough, like a stage fright when you were like, you know what?
Not really. I think I just like performed more and more, and it's not crippling anymore. Like I, obviously still get stressed, but it used to really like I said, I had to face the corner with one person in the room. So
here's the real question. Is it more nerve-wracking if it's complete strangers or people that you know, or like
people
family?
that you know.
That's
yeah.
okay.
I'd way rather perform for strangers.
Right. Okay,
Yeah,
so
no, I totally
I
agree.
say that too,
Yeah.
Totally agree.
but a lot of people will say the reverse. Like
No.
some folks that I know are like, oh God, like, like at least I know everyone here is supportive. I can, embarrass myself and it's whatever. But strangers, it's like, oh God, I feel their judgment. And I'm like, no, I'm the exact
Same.
opposite.
I'm the opposite. I'm the opposite too.
Because if I embarrass myself in front of strangers, it's like, peace out, y'all. I'll never see
I'll
you
never
again.
see you again. Exactly. But you got to face your friends and family.
Exactly. You got to go to Thanksgiving the next day and be like, hey, so about last night, I was off. I had a cold. It wasn't.
No, exactly.
Excuses. Anyhow.
So I just wanted to kind of refocus on your education. So we spoke about your bachelor's of music from Carleton University, but you also attended the Royal Conservatory of Music. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I did like Royal Conservatory piano and voice in growing up, like in high school and stuff. So I did the RCM piano and voice exams, and it was really great experience. I learned a lot about discipline and like technique and stuff. I feel like it wasn't necessarily the aspect of music that I was the most passionate about, like the classical kind of stuff. I think my favorite part was like the popular selection that you got for the exams, but it was really good, like a really good foundation to have, I think, for the most part. So
Would you like recommend if someone was like, I want to be a pop singer, would you say that's worth going through a program like that to get like some technique or some technical knowledge down?
I think it's helped me out more for my voice than piano. I think it depends. Like learning classical voice for me really helped to strengthen
I'm sure.
my voice. So yeah, I don't know if I'd like
Definitely.
necessarily recommend it, but it was good for me, I think, positive.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I hear that all the time. People who study classical vocals tend to have an easier time learning other styles.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what do you find to be the most valuable thing you've learned? Because you've studied under professionals like Giselle Mins, Roxanne Goodman, Debra DeVaughn. What do you find to be the most valuable lesson?
I think to be sure of myself and take up space. Each person kind of taught me, like Giselle was my songwriting teacher for the first few years of the bachelor's degree at Carleton. And then I switched to Roxanne after, and she was more vocals and confidence and performance. And then Debra was like my childhood voice teacher. And they all taught me like very different things because I was in very different places in terms of like confidence and obviously vocals and stuff too. But definitely just to take up space, trust myself, and not take it too seriously. I think like just go for it.
Yeah, for sure.
Would you ever teach? Think you would enjoy teaching voice?
Yeah, I would maybe. I've never taught before, but I think I would prefer to teach voice rather than like piano and stuff because it's probably what I'm most comfortable with now.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
You
Right
totally
on.
taught before. You were teaching me last night.
Okay,
She's
I
like,
guess.
you gotta have like a high vocal
Non-formal.
posture for the low notes. And I was like, what? I've been doing everything backwards.
This is groundbreaking for you. I'm glad I could help.
Q was learning so much on just one episode, Look at look at
I
you,
always learn
MacGyver.
so much. This is the
Look at
most,
you go.
most educational podcast.
Going back to the whole education thing, I think doing multiple degrees is a thing that I always found to be super helpful because it gives me a different perspective. But more along the lines of different perspectives, there's education where you gain a lot of experience, but there's also like playing in bands and gigging, and I find like the combination of the two is amazing. So stepping a bit away from, what would you say you learned the most about yourself whilst playing in bands and gigging as a singer-songwriter?
Well, my first kind of band, I used to play my church band, and so I really like eased into performing, I feel like, because church band was like they made it really clear, like, this is not a performance, you're leading people like in worship, so it's like people aren't looking at you, they're looking at the words above your head. So I don't know, it it's not like all about you. You're not the center. So that's kind of was like my first thing that I did. And then in school I played gigs with friends and stuff. I think it's just good to have performance experience, like just to learn to kind of play through the mistakes, learn how to adapt, like think on the fly, have fun with it.
Yeah.
Was that gospel music you were playing in the church group?
It wasn't really gospel. It was more like contemporary, like yeah. It was fun. It was good experience. Like I did it pretty often, so a couple times a week, and like it was pretty good performance experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you
Right on.
like churches as like an atmosphere to play at? Like
It really depends on the church, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I guess some are nicer than others, but I feel like it's acoustically most churches are very old buildings, and I think that there was way more appreciation for acoustics in that era of architecture when those big epic like cathedrals were being built.
Yeah, true. It wasn't a super like old church, but they had a really big band. Like it was like a 5-6 piece band, like drums, bass, guitar, synth, keys, a few singers. So it was really fun, and like the people that ran it were pretty like really good musicians, and a lot of it, like most of it was volunteer in terms of the band members, and they were all really strong musicians. So it was definitely fun performance.
You guys had a synth in there.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was
I was so that's like kind of a more modern sound than I was picturing.
Oh yeah, we rocked out.
Oh, okay. Dang.
So, Rachel, we talked about your experience gigging and playing in bands and everything, but you also put out some, and I have to say, like, phenomenal music. I really, really enjoyed listening through all of your material, and I want to take this time in the interview to really go through one song at a time and cue if you worked on these songs, because I know you two work very closely with one another, and I think that's wonderful. And so it's not every time that we get to have the collaborative person with the artist. So I really want to like delve into all of these. So let's go over all your releases one at a time. Let's start with Try It Out. Try It Out was great.
Thank you. Yeah, that was well, I don't know. Do you have any
Starting out with my
specific-
fave.
Yeah, I think that was the one that we had the most clear vision for, like, or at least I did.
Oh, I was gonna say that's the one that changed the most over the course.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, like we kept on having like a new idea, like, ooh, let's add like Dale doing like some
That's
gospel
true.
background.
But I feel like it kind of fell into place. Like,
Yeah.
like I don't know. I had like the references and stuff. Like I had the most clear idea of what I wanted in terms of arrangement for that one. I mean, obviously, besides like the ones that are just piano.
What was the reference for that one?
I think it was like some Southern soul.
Oh wait, it was Ravi Shankar's daughter. What's her name?
Oh, it was Midnight. Was it Midnight in Harlem?
Oh, it was Tedeschi.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think
Do you
so.
guys know Tedeschi Trucks Band?
I do not.
Yeah. We were kind of going for like a little bit of neo soul and a little bit of gospel-y, slow triplet balladry. And yeah, I think that one is the one that went the smoothest in terms of like there weren't the other ones, like everything had kind of like, oh, there's a roadblock here, an obstacle, something that we didn't think of, or oh, this wasn't working. But that one, it was like very
Yeah.
I just liked it more and more the more we added to it. Like it was
Right.
that was a satisfying one.
Yeah.
As opposed to Misconception, which like for some reason
Oh, man.
we could not figure out a drum groove that was appropriate. And I think I was just overthinking the problem. Like we had a couple drummers that established like here's how the feel should be, and I allowed that to sort of like I just kind of accepted that, and then I was certain that something wasn't quite right about it, but I couldn't describe what. And it wasn't until we added Steve into the mix where he's like, "Oh, it should be like a shuffle, like this double timey and
Yeah.
a complete." And I was like, "Oh, that's the missing bit." Like I immediately was like, "That's
Yeah, we really struggled with Misconception. Like I brought all of these songs to Quddus, just like piano and voice. And Misconception, it ended up being good. Like I think I gave you some Amy Winehouse kind of
Yeah.
vibes.
I don't remember which song specifically, but it was definitely Amy."
Yeah. But we had to rework it so many times. But then in the end, after Steve, we were like, aha!
Yeah.
Like we had that.
Yeah, it came together.
Yeah.
And drums is usually the thing that you start with when a singer-songwriter just delivers like a demo to you. It's like, here are the chords, here's the main melody. How should we arrange this into something? I always start with the drums, and that was like the thing that we couldn't get past. So Misconception took a while to like get out of the gate, but I'm super happy with how it turned out in the end.
Yeah, me
That was
too.
a fun one.
Sounds great. I was totally vibing to that one. Like, I listened to all of them, of course, but like that one was truly, I guess, more upbeat. I don't know.
Yeah, it's true. I'm really happy with how it turned out. Like, if there was a while where I was like, "Ooh, I don't know about this one," but it really came through. Like, it paid off. Especially, I really love the like low key sax solo bridge part.
That one was another.
Really came out of left field.
Yeah,
I mean, I knew I wanted like
misconception.
a sax bridge, but the way that was arranged was not
Yeah.
what I was expecting. But it sounds sick.
Yeah, that was the most rewritten and then rewritten like bridge or solo section that I've ever had, because like we had a sort of improv sax solo that wasn't quite hitting, and then we tried like a other thing. I think Ben attempted some kind of guitar.
Yeah,
He-
maybe.
he wrote a thing, and then in the end, what we went with was I went back to that sax player's house again, and I was like, I'm going to just sing to you and record, or I sang into the microphone. I recorded a sax solo, quote unquote, that was just me making embarrassing sax noises into like his mic, and then I made him listen to it a bunch of times, and I was like, let's just do that. And he's a really good musician. Like, he's able to sort of interpolate that and add a bit of phrasing and make it a bit more exciting, and that's what we ended up using. But we were kind of on the fence with it until we added a violin supporting part into it. It was such a weird like evolution
Yeah, it
to this
was.
bridge, but I think we found the right je ne sais quoi by the end. It's
Okay.
really tough to make a song sound like a cohesive band that is in the same room together, making eye contact and communicating musically with each other when it's all an illusion. Like, you're constructing this thing one instrument at a time with a bunch of musicians that have never met each other. They have completely different styles and backgrounds and whatever. And you have to sort of give each member the correct instructions to maintain the illusion that is that because it's kind of a retro sounding song. I didn't want it to sound like a sleek, modern, tightly edited thing. I wanted to leave things kind of loose. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was
Gotcha.
definitely the challenge with Misconception, but I had a great time with that one.
Let's talk about Dear Mom. That one is something else.
That one made me cry.
I don't even know how to ask
Oh.
how to get into that one because of how like this one's obviously like very emotional and it's close to the heart, and I think that people listening to that can relate, can have a point of relation with the song. What do you want to say about that, like emotionally and lyrically? Let's start with that, Rachel. Like, how is that song for you?
Yeah, that one I think that's one of the songs that I've written that have best articulated how I was feeling. Like, sometimes you write a song and like it's good, but this one was like I wrote it exactly how I was feeling. The words just came out the right way, and I wrote it in like, I don't know, like 40 minutes or something. And it just this was when I was in school and I was in Ottawa, so I was far away from home, and I was going through whatever, and so I was missing home, missing my mom, missing everything. And I knew that I wanted this arrangement to be really simple because obviously the lyrics are the key element to this
Yeah.
song. So the arrangement was just simple. I'd written like a little piano accompaniment, and I kind of wanted it to have a lullaby-ish feel to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I kind of had a hard time listening through that song because it was so emotional. But absolutely beautiful song, beautiful lyrics.
Yeah, thank
It
you.
grabs
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like good job on that one. I mean, all of them, but like specifically that one, like the intention was felt for Anthony and I, and I'm sure for others that have listened to it.
That is a song that I think I actually learned a lot. Obviously, it's just piano and singing. It's not the most involved, elaborate arrangement. So my job as a producer was essentially just put a microphone in front and go. Like, I didn't change much. But when we were discussing the structure, I think the song is like 4.5 minutes long or
It's
so.
pretty long, yeah.
And like something that they covered in when I was studying production at Algonquin, they were like, pay a lot of attention to the song length. Like, is it going somewhere? Is it growing? If not, the ear will become sort of fatigued. And they were like talking about trimming the fat is like something they emphasized a lot in song structure. And I brought that up to Rachel. I was like, this is a very stripped down song, and I think it should stay that way. But I'm like worried that the length is going to be too much for how long it is. And so I think we went back and forth a couple times. We were like, oh, maybe this
Yeah, there were a few
line.
places where you were like, oh, you could trim this and it would still make sense or whatever.
Yeah, I think I was saying let's cut the second verse in half and then like
Something like
reduce
that.
the outros. I wanted to make some sort of change like that. And then in the end,
Okay.
we didn't make any of those changes. And I'm glad we didn't because I forget who made this. I think you were like, it's not even really just this isn't like a commercial song. It's kind of like it's like a tribute.
Yeah, well, I released it on my mom didn't know that I was recording it. She'd heard the song before, obviously, like I'd played it for her, but I released it on her birthday,
Oh,
and
that's
she didn't know
nice.
that I'd recorded it with Quddus. So it was a birthday surprise. So I didn't want to trim it because it was really for her. So it didn't,
That's so
the
sweet.
length wasn't the main concern.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
I see
Right,
what
but
you mean.
that's what my point is that that's what I learned about when it comes to trimming fat. I was kind of getting a bit too like into the weeds with it, and I realized that part of my job is to go, who is this for? Like, what is the audience of this song? Is this a commercial thing? Is this meant to have a wide appeal, or is this like it would have interfered with the purpose of the song itself for me to go in there and let's tweak this, let's change that, because it is a deeply personal song.
Right.
So that's kind of what I got out of it, or like that's the lesson that I got from that, is that like sometimes, how do I say this? It's like Rachel knows more about what the core of this song is than I do as a listener. You know, I don't need to be the audience surrogate in this situation as a
Right.
producer.
It's
I just
more like
kind of
you need to
let
tap
the piece
into that,
happen.
right? It's
Yeah.
more like you need to tap into that as a producer, is what you're trying to
Exactly.
get at, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's amazing because the song is helping you grow just in the process of working on it, you know?
Yeah, I love it when that happened. And the recording itself was kind of interesting because I did I think we had like just some MIDI piano just to track vocals to, and we had all those
Right.
pieces. It was just sort of block chords, and I think the plan from the start was to replace that with an acoustic piano.
Because we had like I written the piano arrangement, but when we recorded it for the
The scratch tracks.
the scratch tracks, it was just the MIDI.
Yeah. So what we ended up doing was I was working at a piano store in Ottawa at the time, and they had just brought in. My boss bought this antique that he was going to fix up, redo the finish, and then sell at a profit. And it was a 1911 Steinway,
Holy.
which is
Wow.
at the time. At the time, they were probably considered the most luxury piano that there is. And this thing is certainly the oldest piano I've ever played. It sounded, and I don't even think that any of the parts had been replaced other than the strings. So like, you could really like hear the history in this thing. It was
Oh, for sure.
Well, it was cool because you could hear like the pedal, like when you put the pedal down in
Yeah.
each key, like the ambient noise of the keys and stuff, which we kind of liked. Like we wanted that.
Yeah, is very like this clunky old 100-year-old mechanism inside this piano sort of just becomes as all these moving parts, they wear down over time, and you could just hear that in the quality of the sound itself, and it was so beautiful. So
Allow me to geek out a little bit here. I just want to ask you about the Steinway specifically.
Sure.
Do you know what the model was? Like, because I
can't
really
remember.
love where you're going with this. Do you like what else can you say about like the
I can't
piano
remember
itself?
other
Like-
than it was a Steinway Baby Grand, and it was not stained black. Which is a sign that it's old, because the fashion for
Right.
pianos has been dark black stain for I think at least like 80, probably closer to 100 years. But this is like a 110-year-old piano, so it was just like wood colored piano. You never see that anymore. And
That's gorgeous.
that was I think I couldn't even touch the surface of the piano at the time because the redo of the finish that my boss had done was still drying. So I was recording on a piano that I had to like be careful not to ruin the finish. But yeah,
Right.
anyway, so I just brought some microphones and an interface into the piano store, and we just tracked it there in a few takes.
It's all about being mobile, baby.
4 a.m. or something.
Yeah, it was definitely after hours.
Yeah,
You're just in the middle of the day showing up at the piano.
Yes.
I need all the clients to leave. This is very important.
Yeah, everyone get out. Yeah, that's right. I was absolutely like, I'm in general like a mild history geek, and for some reason I couldn't get over the fact that I was interacting with an appliance that was that old. So I started randomly Googling what was going on in the world in 1911, and just picked up random. I was like, oh, the guy who wrote Tom Sawyer was alive, and like Mark Twain was still chilling in 1911 when this piano was made, and now it's on this record that I'm working on. Like it was
That's cool.
very exciting
really
to
cool.
me. If you're if you're into history in that way.
Soundspace is proudly sponsored by Laser Audio Technologies. Use code SOUNDSPACE for 30% off any purchase. Transform your sound with Glow, a mass granulator, or with the modern degradation of codec by visiting laser.io today.
I'm going to steer away from this and kind of just to cap off, because we have only 2 more songs to discuss, and I really want to get to these. We have Breathe, obviously, and then we have Warmer Light. Do you kind of just want to go over those 2? Because I know Warmer Light is a more recent one. It came out last year. So let's cap off with Breathe, and then we can I'll let you get into Warmer Light when you feel like you've said what you had to say about Breathe.
Yeah. Do you have anything specific to say about Breathe, Quddus?
I don't have much to say about Breathe. I remember having a lot of fun with the string arrangement. Because that was a chance that, like, I had contacted Ottawa U, the director of their music program, and I think I just emailed him saying, "Do you know of like any really solid cellists that are actively like session players, and who's a really good one?" Like I just asked for a recommendation, and he pointed me to this guy Patrick, and I just thought because it's pretty expensive to get, it's a fairly in demand instrument. And he's a successful session player, so he could really command a high price. So I was like, okay, I'll bring him in for this time. And I had, I think, at least 3 projects at the time going that could use cello on them. So I thought, I'm just going to get him in the room, squeeze all this stuff in, and then like it'll be worth the, because 3 different people are paying me to do this one thing. So I was trying to think, budget efficiency, right? And that was the first time that I ever had like a pro cellist in my hands that I could just be, what if we did this? What if we did that? And then I sort of let him go off-roading a bit and tried a bunch of layers. And I was pretty astonished at his ability to, like, he's so used to playing with an ensemble that he can go, okay, like he was naming parts. It's like, this will be the like middle harmony. And then he remembers precisely what notes he's playing when he's adding like a lower part and constructing these chords, as building what is effectively like a chamber string quartet, but just by himself one at a time, and keeping each layer in his head as he's adding the next one. It was really impressive, and that's the main memory I have of doing Breathe.
Okay.
Do you have any?
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have anything really to add.
No.
Yeah.
All good. And then Warmer Light.
Yeah, Warmer Light. Quddus wasn't a part of that one, but that's one I wrote with a producer. It was a co-write, so he is a guitarist, and Ben wrote the guitar part, and I wrote the melody and the vocals. So it was really collaborative. And then he produced it, and we arranged it together, and it was really done it was like a COVID project. We started it for a class through school in our last year. And then we're having so much fun with it that we decided to continue working on it after the assignment was handed in. And it was fun. It really grew and took on a lot. And in the end, it's a very full arrangement with a lot of acoustic sounds. And that came out a few months ago in November.
Congratulations, so. That's great.
Yeah, that's always nice when you're working on a composition for class and it turns out to be so great, you go back to it afterwards. Because otherwise it kind of feels like a waste if you don't do anything with it, right? If you don't revisit it.
Yeah, no, exactly. Because we had so many ideas, and then I think we needed to hand it in, so we couldn't actually follow through with all the ideas. We had to just get some sort of final product for class, and then we were like, let's circle back. Let's keep going.
I wanted to ask, like, what was it specifically that motivated you to sort of transition into a different genre? Like, you kind of, like, from the
Yeah.
EP to the more folky stuff. Because when we were working together, it was like a Nora Jones, Amy Winehouse kind of thing. And then you moved, like, was it a specific artist that you inspired you to, like?
I think it was over COVID, I started playing guitar. Like, I'd never really played guitar before. It was mainly piano. So I started writing on guitar and teaching myself guitar. And it kind of changed my songwriting in like a cool way. It was the first time I'd written on a different instrument. And so I started listening to different artists and listening for different elements, and then I guess developing a folkier sound.
That's some songwriting advice I would give to anybody, is that, like, try writing on an instrument that you're completely uncomfortable with, and it will push you in a different direction that you weren't expecting, and it can kind of breathe new life. Even if a song is sort of it's sort of like not coming together, sometimes that's the missing
Super true,
thing
yeah.
that can refresh it, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. Sometimes I'll write something on piano and be like, and then I'll switch to guitar and I'm like, oh, wait a second. It kind of finds its way.
Yeah, some things like translate well, but other times like you're trying to make it work on an instrument and it's like, this thing is just begging for piano, it just needs to be played a certain way.
Right. With all the music you made, how do you go about just remaining motivated, and like active? Because you've been putting out music. How do you do that? Because I think it's something that's not necessarily easy to do, but you seem to be doing it pretty well. You're putting out great music and you're doing it, actively. So how do you do that?
I think for me, I'm someone who really thrives with structure. So I like school, like I have assignments, they're due. No, like I'm going to do it. So I really have to like set concrete goals and make it really tangible. Like, I'm not someone that really works well just like, I'll do this. Like I have goals, I'm trying to do this. And then also I find collaborating with other people really helps because it inspires you in different ways and you learn different things. So I would say, for me, it would be like consuming different art, consuming different music, working with other people, and then like getting down to business would be like setting concrete goals.
Right. I see. And when you set these goals, do you ever come across like a lot of people have come on, like I love artists that came on last year. We're talking about like feeling like imposter syndrome, as in like, I'm not good enough, like I'm fake it till you make it kind of thing, or like writer's block. How do you go about dealing with like such creative struggles? Not necessarily those two, but like just whenever there's like some sort of roadblock when you set that goal and you're on your way to accomplish it.
I feel like everyone has those days where you feel like a dumpster fire, and then those days where you have like a god complex and you're like,
we've all been there.
180.
I am God's gift to humanity. You're all welcome.
Yeah, no, exactly. But I feel like I've heard a lot of artists talk about imposter syndrome recently. And I think that kind of helps because it seems like even the really big, successful, like people in the industry deal with it. So it's like, okay, it's not a reflection of your skill level or where you are. It's just like a part of the journey. So I think just like keep going. It's part of it. And for writer's block, someone told me that when you have writer's block, you should consume other art, like consume other people's art. So that's what I've tried to do is like, whether it's music or film or visual performance art, whatever, just, sometimes when you sit down, it's just not happening. So, go out, consume other art, try to get re-inspired and just enjoy being a consumer.
Do you enjoy jumping across a different media or medium where, okay, I'm going to write a piece based on a book instead of another song?
I actually had a class that kind of helped me to introduce this to me, and he gave us like old film footage and then was like, write something to go behind this footage, or he would have different exercises like that. And I think those kind of things also really help. Like if you don't take it too seriously and just have fun with it and write, I think also another big thing someone told me was that when you're writing, it's a laboratory, not a factory. So you shouldn't try to edit too early. Just kind of let it come out. If you're not happy with it, don't keep rewriting. Just keep going, and then you can always circle back and edit it later. But if you become too critical too early on, then you really end up hitting a roadblock. So just try to not judge yourself in the
I kinda like
creation
that.
process.
It's a laboratory, not a factory.
Yeah.
It's a solid metaphor. Yeah.
Right? I
That's
know.
really
I was like, oh, yeah, true.
I cannot believe that that's an actual class, like that they explicitly, like, that's centered around the idea that music inspiration can come from a place other than other music, because that's like
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
something that I've thought about doing a lot.
What was the name of the class? It was with Petr Cancura. He was the artist in residence at Carleton, and it was like an ensemble, so it wasn't like it was like a pass fail like choir or whatever. But yeah, he just had a lot of collaborative exercises where he would give us like a tune and then pair us off into groups. But it was also over COVID, so it was over Zoom, which was cool actually, because we had a lot of concrete recordings that came out of the class because it was all online. But yeah, he would just pair us off and get us to each come up with our own arrangement, and then we'd listen to them all at the end, and everyone's was so different. Or he'd give us all footage, and then we'd all listen to our compositions after. It was really cool. It was really creative. And
I've been thinking about that a lot lately because, for one thing, a few things happened in the past few years. My favorite Taylor Swift album that she's ever done was
Which one
mostly
is that?
inspired by literature.
which is your favorite album?
The not Evermore, the Folklore.
Oh, Folklore.
I,
Yeah.
For some reason, I always switch the names of those two, but I was blown away by it. Like I've always kind of liked her music, but never took it super seriously. And then that came out, and I was like, oh, she's a legit, like she can take inspiration from like kind of unlikely places and turn it into something that's like very. It is still marketable because she's a top 40s, but it didn't really compromise on that kind of very specific flavor of folk that she was kind of interested in at the time.
It's always cool to hear where
Oh,
the
definitely.
inspiration comes from.
Yeah, I agree with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I was reading interviews with her. She's like, I read this book. I was watching like this true crime thing, and I was just writing songs based on that, and that got me. That was giving me ideas of like how I would apply that in my own thing, in my own artistry. And this is gonna sound very strange, but I went through a very long phase when I was into silent movies, and I always thought about scoring one because so many of those movies are so old that they just exist in the public domain now. And it's like I don't know if you guys have ever seen that 20s, I think 1928 is a Frankenstein movie.
Yeah,
And
of course.
It's one of those movies that no one has watched and sat through, but everyone knows the imagery from it because it's just, in the culture, it's so ubiquitous that you just inevitably come across it. And there's so much visual stuff that I find potent or just sort of interesting that sticks with me. And I was thinking about it, like, it's a silent movie. It's told very visually. I could just take the film and then remove the music because it's very old school, organ music. It doesn't have like a full score. And I just add one myself. And that's kind of the little side passion project that I've been thinking about getting into lately.
That's cool. That's a good idea.
Yeah, that really is a good idea, actually. But really like what you said earlier, Rachel, about getting over writer's block by consuming other art or immersing yourself in different art mediums. I think that's fascinating because, people often forget how closely they are connected.
It's funny actually. The advice my friend ran into Leif Volbeck in the city at a sandwich shop, and she was having art or like a writer's block or whatever. So she asked him, "What's your advice?" And I think she told me that. So then she was like, he said to consume as much art as possible. So advice from Leif Volbeck.
As much as
Yeah.
possible. I feel like that's what I've been doing. I feel like that's the state
you go.
I live
You're
in by
good.
default.
That's all we've been doing since the pandemic, just consuming Netflix.
True.
Yeah. It's like watching this reality TV show counts as art.
counts.
Right? I very much like the idea of like the people. I think Anthony, you and I in the other episode we were talking about musical quoting, and not literally taking a quote, but like grabbing a little piece of something and recontextualizing it in a new thing. That
Yeah.
is
Yes.
another writer's block technique that I've kind of found pretty helpful.
I agree.
I mean, we're talking about Bob Dylan specifically, I think, where he kind of like grabs a line from this and takes a line from that, and he takes a melody from most of the melodies. I think he's always been just using sort of old folk melodies that have just existed forever, and he kind of just takes them, makes it his own in his own twangy way.
Yeah.
You ever do that?
Um,
Like, I'm gonna steal this tiny idea from this thing, and then just let that blossom into a new.
yeah, I think definitely. Well, yeah, like you'll take maybe chords, rearrange them, or there's lots of little tricks that I learned in school if you're having trouble starting, just to, take something and rearrange it and kind of go with that.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So, Rachel, I was really looking forward to talking about your cover of Carry On Wayward Son.
Yeah.
Yeah, your appearance on Supernatural. That was really, really cool. I was super pumped for that. I was excited because that was the first song I heard from you. And I remember because I was in the car with Jaian, and I think we were coming back from Toronto or something, and he puts your song
I was like,
on.
these are the guests that we're gonna have this year, and I just like hit
Yeah, exactly.
your profile on Spotify.
Yeah, exactly. So I was so pumped about that. And I'm really curious, like, how did you get this? How did this come your way?
Yeah. So, like, growing up in White Rock near Vancouver, like, there's obviously a really booming film and television scene there. So back home, I have like an acting agent, and I did some acting for film and television in high school and like auditions and stuff. So it was through that, and it was like an acting part. And then my agent knows that I am a musician and I sing. So for this specific audition, I had to prepare a couple songs, also prepare script, and it just happened to be like a musical part. So it was really fun. It was like 5 days on set, and Supernatural is like a pretty big show with a sizable fan base. So it was a really cool project to be a part of, and it was their 200th episode. I don't know how many. I know it ended recently. I'm not sure how many seasons they got up to, but I don't know, like 10 plus seasons. And so for their 200th, they wanted it to be this musical episode. So the concept was like these high school girls were putting on a musical, and so I was one of the girls in high school. So yeah, got to sing.
That's
cool.
huge. That must have been super exciting.
Have you guys seen the video, or did you just hear it on like Spotify?
Just on Spotify.
Oh man, you got to watch the video. I think Rachel tried to scrub it from the internet because of the haircut she had at the time, but
No, that
you
was
should
a wig.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Oh my god, I didn't even know that.
No,
Okay.
that's not my hair.
I have a bad eye.
It was I was supposed to be playing, it doesn't matter, but basically like the musical that the girls were putting on was based on the two main characters' lives, because there's all this like meta stuff in the show. And so I was playing the mom, and so she's like blonde with a nightgown, so I had like a blonde wig, and
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. That makes a lot of sense.
Nice. And in 2019, you were part of the Music Ottawa. What was the process like for that? And I would like to know, what did you learn from it?
Yeah, Music Ottawa, there were 2 rounds. So the first round was at Carleton, and then the second round was like the Music Ottawa round. And it was really cool because I was able to play these songs that I'd mainly played before just by myself, and work them with a band, come up with an arrangement, play them for a panel of like judges, adjudicators, or professors. And yeah, it was really fun to arrange them and play and have everybody come.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right on.
Do you do
Right
anything
on.
different performing for judges? Like, if you know, like, I'm really being like, I'm not just entertaining a crowd, I'm being like critically examined. Do you like do anything like, I really have to bring it, or I have to?
I feel like there's a bit more pressure to be like perfect.
Yeah.
And also it feels a bit more like playing for your family, because really you're like trying to impress these 3 or 4 people. So instead of, I don't know, for me it's more comfortable, like we said, to play for strangers. So playing for specifically 4 people is a little more intimidating, but yeah, it was fun. It was good.
Yeah, a panel
Okay.
of judges is like the scariest. Like, I can't even watch those singing competitions. I know they're like the most popular shows
Yeah.
ever, but it's either like a heartwarming, everyone starts crying because it's a shocker, like a surprise talent, or like the worst secondhand embarrassment.
Oh
And
yeah, that I can't do the secondhand embarrassment.
yeah, I don't know. I just don't like watching it. And
Somehow
because
worse.
I've embarrassed myself on stage before, so it's not just ha ha ha, bad singer gets laughed at. It's like, oh no, I'm mentally putting myself in their position right now, and it hurts. I don't like it.
Yeah, definitely. It's quite nerve-wracking. But I'm sure you're quite grateful for the techniques you've learned for overcoming stage fright.
Yeah,
You know?
definitely. It was
You were well prepared.
yeah, definitely.
I'd like to know a little more about what was your experience like on music volume on your TV? What was that like?
Yeah, so the Your TV it's like this Smith it's based in Smith Falls and through Rogers TV. So they mainly feature like duos or acoustic acts, like not so much big bands. So it was fun. You do like a half an hour set of original material, and it's streamed. So you play, and then there's no audience. So you're just like, oh, thanks, and then next.
That's somehow better.
Yeah, honestly.
Or
But
worse? I don't know.
I think it's
No
worse
reaction?
to be honest, because
Yeah, you don't know.
you're like,
what
was
you're
that
getting.
good? Was that bad? Like, what had
Yeah.
I don't even remember. Did I play it? Like,
Yeah, it's actually probably worse.
but it was fun. It was good. I did it a couple times, and it was it was fun. It was fun to play by myself, work these songs, and play a full set of original material.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Definitely. Let's go more towards everything that's studio, because that's something I really want to get into. We obviously talked about you performing in studio or on stage. I wanted to know what would you say is the main differences between those two types of performances, whether it be on a stage or in a recording session for your next song that you're working on.
Well, in a recording booth, I feel like it's a lot of the same thing over again, trying to get the take that you're going to go with. And then performance is a bit more organic, just, letting it go. I feel like I'm probably more comfortable in my bedroom, so neither.
Okay.
But yeah, they're very different. I feel like, because the performance aspect requires a lot of quick thinking and nonverbal communication between musicians and connecting with the audience. And then in the studio, it's a lot more technical. They're different, and I think they both can be fun.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. And we've all been in live situations before. And as you know, there's always at least one thing that goes wrong.
Yeah.
And so it's all about troubleshooting and, like you said, communication.
Mm-hmm.
I find like the amount of detail that you pick up from a vocal performance listening to, a studio recorded piece versus live, you can get away with so many more mistakes. You can, really like just sort of pass over it. No one will even retain that. But like you're shooting for perfection in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very different thing. And
It's
like
more surgical.
yeah, that's true.
Ooh,
And it's
I
more
like that.
like-
Yeah, surgical. Yeah.
It's more patience testing than it is this is my one chance to nail it, sort of like on stage.
Yeah, because you have
you're
like
just sort of
infinity
singing the
mistakes
same
that you
thing
can
over and
make.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
see
And
what
you can
mean.
try all these different, vocal styles,
Yeah.
or,
Very fair, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've
sure.
heard actors say, well, I mean, this is you, but like I've heard acting / music people, like folks who do both, make the comparison of like theater acting. You have to exaggerate every single facial expression and emotion because the crowd's like a mile away, and for that to come through, you need to overact, I guess. So whenever you see like a theater actor, they just get dropped into a movie. They seem like so much more like larger than life, and it's like, why is this guy overacting? When movie actors, they're like, oh, did you see the way his eyes subtly
Yeah,
twitched,
it's
and that
about the
implies the
subtleties.
inner conflict, and like that's stuff that just does not translate to a live with a crowd setting. And I think you could say all this same exact stuff about singing.
Yeah.
It's like,
Right.
would you agree?
Right. I see where you're coming from. And Rachel, when you do all focusing more back on the studio, when you work with an aspiring engineer or a music producer, specifically in the way you communicate with them, what would be your advice for an up-and-coming engineer on how to talk and communicate with an artist? Because there's a lot of technical mumble jumble sometimes, and what you mean to say is not exactly what you're saying. What would you say to an aspiring producer or audio engineer to better communicate with an artist such as yourself or anyone else?
Maybe you have more to say about this than me, but I can start. Obviously communication is super, super key. I think also staying open. Like there were some times where maybe you had an idea that I wasn't convinced of or like wasn't really sure what the vision was. And maybe we didn't end up going with it, but maybe it's going to inspire another idea. So I think staying, obviously trusting your gut, but staying open to maybe things that you didn't think of before. And yeah, I guess like super clear communication, examples, like putting in the detailed work at the beginning so that you are on the same page as much as possible.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, she just nailed it in terms of like the most important thing being like just be open to a new like a suggestion or a change and it's tempting to not be because I understand the impulse of like this is my creation, like how dare you, like I totally get when artists get defensive of like how don't like tinker with my thing, my work, but I find like the advice that they give people in improv that like you got to yes and stuff. That's I kind of translates to studio work because you're trying to get some momentum going, like you're trying to establish a bit of creative like you're jumping from one idea to the next with a bit of with like enthusiasm. You don't want to like force yourself through the process, and even if you're not fully sure where someone's coming from, if you just yes and that shit, you can eventually land in a place that you're happy with. Like if you
That's
push
brilliant.
through, and I think that's like the core of collaborating. Like,
Do you think there's a point where there's too much of that and it's just you overexhaust it?
Yeah, but I think that usually
and it just
becomes
loses
clear,
focus.
like the next day, like when you sleep on it, you come back to the studio, or like, all right, what the fuck did we do last night? You play it, and you can immediately know if you go like
coming with back
wow,
with fresh
we
ears.
were really onto something, or
Definitely.
this is like let's just pull it back.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's why like
definitely.
every day that I start again, like working on a session, I usually do a save as, just because I'm like, I know that I might want to just return to this point if I go down, if I'm like barking up the wrong tree, as they say. Like this is just we should just change the direction. You don't have to like delete like all these things and like revert all these.
Yeah, save snapshots.
Yeah, like
For sure.
always just be able to return. It's like saving the what is it called?
No,
The
true.
checkpoint.
And I feel like sometimes it's important to go down those rabbit holes, even if you don't end up using them, because then you're like, okay, well, that's not going to work. Like, that's not going to work. So then you can get to something that will work.
Right.
Totally. Yeah, and it's like, hey, it was an experiment. We tried it. Now we know.
Yeah. It
We've
could
eliminated
inspire
that.
a whole new thing. And then there you go.
That's happened to me a couple
Okay.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's I think this question ties literally into what you're currently answering, so I'm going to ask it now.
Sure.
Outside of everything you've described, is there other points of advice or anything else audio engineering related that you want to highlight regarding when you work with Rachel and on her music and stuff like that?
Pay close attention to like the strengths and weaknesses of who you're working with, because some people need absolutely zero input when it comes to like coaching a vocal or structuring a song, and some people need like a lot of, if they're like inexperienced with one thing, then like you really just have to fill the gaps in whoever the specific client is that's in front of you. You just have to fill in like those skill gaps. I feel like that's the most important call to make, because knowing when to back off and let someone do their thing is a tough call to make, because people have an ego and they're like, oh, I want to feel like I'm useful, but sometimes someone just knows more than you. Like I've worked with a million, like if I'm recording like an R&B song like I was the other day, I really had to sort of work with that. I was singing lines through the talkback microphone to the vocals. Like, well, do this, do that, do this. And giving them very specific instructions. It's like, okay, now we're going to do this harmony. And I was kind of directing that aspect of the piece. But with Rachel, on the other hand, she's been singing since she was in the crib, apparently. So, like, clearly, I do not need to weigh in on this aspect at all. Like, she knows what she's doing vocally. Right. And I can talk about other, like, the technical side of things, arrangement. That is where that's what I mean by fill in the gaps.
Right.
I would be, it would be out of line for me to start saying, oh, you should sing this better, you know, because I'm not an experienced vocalist enough to dictate that type of thing. So that'd be my, I think, most important advice is like, no, like just recognize when someone knows more than you, or when you know more than someone that you're working with.
Perfect. Okay, and Rachel, my last question for you would be, we discussed the 5 songs that you've put out. What are you working on now? If I'm listening to this podcast and I'm enjoying what I'm hearing, what can I expect in terms of music and shows? What are you planning to do in 2023?
Yeah, I have another single that should be coming out in the next month or two. So I'm really excited about that. And then in terms of shows, just some, just little stuff around the city. I'm going to be doing a lot more writing. Quddus and I have been doing some little folky duo stuff.
Wow, that's awesome.
So yeah, just stay tuned on, social media, Instagram.
What's the song
TikTok.
called?
What song? Oh yeah, Ever Since You've Been Gone.
You should totally tell them about the music video, because that's coming up, right?
Yeah, well, with Ever Since You've Been Gone. Yeah. So when that comes out, there'll be like a video. There's a few exciting things on the horizon.
Very
to be released soon.
What was what was the inspiration for that one?
This was my, I feel like every artist had like a COVID song that they wrote, and it was like, oh, so this was my COVID song. I wrote it a few years ago, and then it was with the same producer as Warmer Light, so it's kind of like part 2, except this one we didn't write together. This was one that I wrote.
Awesome. That's really cool.
Right. Okay. Very cool. Anthony, I think it's tradition time.
Yes. So typically, before ending an episode, we like to ask our guests one final question. And it's the same question every time. We just like to see the different responses we get. So my question to you is, what is your advice to people who want to get into the space of sound?
I would say that it doesn't really matter your skill set, level of experience, technical capabilities. You can start like wherever you are, and you have something to contribute wherever you're at. So you can create, you can write, do whatever. If you can just play a couple chords on piano, like you can make something out of that. So I'd say just like, don't be afraid. Don't judge yourself too harshly. Just let yourself have fun. Don't take it too seriously, and just go for it.
Very nice.
Very well said.
Very nice. Yes. Rachel, where can people find you on social media? Where can they follow you? Obviously, everything will be linked in the description, but please go ahead and promote yourself.
Yeah, so I'm on Apple Music, Spotify, Deezer, wherever you listen to music, Rachel Warkentin. And then Instagram, it's Rachel Red. And there's TikTok as well, and YouTube. Rachel Warkentin should come up, so.
Perfect. Everything will be linked in the description. Please go follow her. Anthony, where can people find you?
Yeah, well, I'm most active on Instagram, so you can find me at akachi.audio. So that's ACACI.audio.
Perfect.
And you can find me on my website, akachi-audio.com.
By the way, I checked it out. Good job on the website. I wanted to say it in person, but I'm saying on recording. Great website.
You're simping on my web.
It's for real. And Q, where can people find you, man?
I'm also most active on Instagram, so just Quddus Gordon 1 is my thing. Somebody beat me to
Perfect.
it, but
Perfect. It's
Dot
okay.
one.
It's all right, bro.
There's
it's
only
okay.
one. I'm gonna find him. I'm gonna take him down. Steal that
MacGyver.
domain.
Okay,
there
great.
can only be one.
Yeah, it's like Highlander, that movie from the 80s. That's terrible.
Exactly. The artwork for Soundspace is provided by GoPro Kyo. He's on social media at GoPro Kyo, at Church Art Portal on Instagram. For myself, I am at Jaian Music on social media, and jaianmusic.com is my website. We are sponsored by Laser Audio Technologies. They make awesome plugins. Laser.io. 30% off if you use code SoundSpace. And finally, the podcast is everywhere on social media. Go follow us at SoundSpace. Go follow us on any streaming platform. We're everywhere in your ears. Download us. Give us a 5-star review. All those good things. Thank you for all the love on the recent episodes. This year has been phenomenal so far. So for myself, Rachel, Quddus, and Anthony, this has been another episode of Soundspace. Bye, everyone.
Cheers.